Astronomers have found hundreds of planets roughly twice the size of Earth. We call them super-Earths. And for years, we've been asking the same question. Could anything live there? Today, we finally get an answer. And it is not what anyone hoped. Most people think the danger would be the weight. That a bigger Earth would just make everything heavier. Maybe harder to walk. Maybe harder to breathe. But the real danger is something far more invisible. It's not your legs that fail first. It's not the buildings that collapse first. The real danger hides inside the air itself. It builds slowly, silently, and by the time you feel it, it may already be too late. But let's start at the beginning. Right now, Earth has a radius of about 4,000 miles. Its gravity pulls at 9.8 meters per second squared. That number feels normal because we were born into it. Every bone in your body, every muscle, every heartbeat was shaped by exactly this gravity. Planes were designed for this gravity. Buildings were designed for this gravity. Even the mountains were shaped by this gravity. Change that one number, and everything changes with it. Now let's talk about what a twice as large Earth actually means. If Earth's radius doubled, from roughly 4,000 miles to 8,000 miles, the planet wouldn't just be twice as heavy. It would be 8 times as massive. Because volume doesn't scale linearly with radius. It scales by the cube. And here is where the math gets serious. Surface gravity equals g times mass divided by radius squared. If mass goes up by 8 and radius doubles, gravity increases by exactly a factor of 2. A twice as large Earth would have twice the gravity of Earth today. Right now, you weigh exactly as much as you weigh. On this new Earth, you would instantly weigh twice that. A 150-pound person becomes a 300-pound person overnight, without gaining a single calorie. Imagine waking up tomorrow morning and trying to lift yourself out of bed, not with twice the strength, but with half. Your arms push, your legs strain, and every movement feels like you're wearing a suit made of concrete. That is your new normal. In the very first second of this new Earth, your body doesn't understand what happened. Your inner ear sends confused signals to your brain. The floor presses up against your feet harder than it ever has. Your heart, which has been pumping blood at the same pressure your whole life, suddenly has to push against twice the gravitational resistance. Blood pooling in your legs becomes an immediate problem. The heart has to work much harder just to get blood up to the brain. In this scenario, many people would feel dizzy or faint within the first few seconds. Not because of shock, but because the cardiovascular system simply was not designed for 2 times Earth's gravity. Animals face the same problem. Birds would struggle to take off, not because their wings changed, but because their bodies just doubled in effective weight. The sky goes very, very quiet. Fish in the ocean might actually fare slightly better at first. Water provides buoyancy that offsets some of the extra gravitational pull. But even aquatic life would feel the compression, the ocean column pressing down harder, creating new pressure zones in the deep that no life ever evolved to handle. Trees would begin to fail, not all at once, but steadily. A mature oak tree holds itself upright against 1G perfectly. Against 2G, its own trunk becomes the enemy. Forests begin to collapse under their own weight. In the first few minutes, cities begin showing the strain. Older buildings, designed with minimal safety margins, start to crack. Bridges groan under the suddenly doubled weight of traffic. Suspension cables stretch beyond their design tolerance. Roads begin to buckle. Elevators stop working. They were engineered to lift a maximum load. With everyone on board now weighing twice as much, most elevator motors overload and shut down. Millions of people are immediately stranded in offices and high-rise apartments. Planes on the ground are still intact, for now. But every plane currently in the air faces a sudden crisis. Lift depends on airspeed and the density of the atmosphere. With everyone and everything on board suddenly weighing twice as much, every aircraft in the sky is now dangerously close to its stall speed. Now here's the strange part about the atmosphere. A twice as large Earth with twice the gravity wouldn't just have more air. It would compress the air it already has, much closer to the surface. The atmosphere's scale height, which describes how thick the breathable layer is, would shrink, meaning the air at sea level gets denser, heavier, and harder to process. Right now, sea level air pressure is about 14.7 pounds per square inch. On a twice as large Earth, that number would very likely increase significantly. Not instantly, not in the first minute, but the process begins the moment the gravity changes. And that slow build is the hidden danger. 1 hour in, emergency services are overwhelmed, not from dramatic explosions or flooding, but from millions of people experiencing cardiovascular strain. Hospitals fill with patients whose hearts are simply working overtime. The elderly and those with pre-existing heart conditions are the most vulnerable. A heart that was already working near its limit has just had its workload doubled. In this scenario, mortality rates in that first hour would likely be tragically high, and the world would still be scrambling to understand why. Meanwhile, the planet itself is responding. The Earth's interior is under massive new stress. All that extra mass means far more pressure on the mantle. The tectonic plates, already in constant slow motion, would begin to shift faster. The geological equilibrium of billions of years, disrupted in a single moment. Volcanoes that had been dormant begin showing signs of awakening. Fault lines that hadn't moved in centuries begin to shift. In the first hour, minor earthquakes ripple across every continent. Not catastrophic yet, but the planet is adjusting, and it's just getting started. Now here's something most people never think about. Mountains. Mount Everest stands at over 29,000 feet. On a twice as large Earth, that height would be physically impossible. Here's why. Mountains are essentially enormous piles of rock held upright against gravity. The rock has a maximum compressive strength, the pressure it can support before it flows like a slow liquid. On Earth today, that limit sets the maximum mountain height at roughly 40,000 to 50,000 feet. With twice the gravity, that limit drops by roughly half. The Himalayas would begin to slowly collapse under their own weight. This is the twist that changes everything. A twice as large Earth would be, paradoxically, more flat. Without the ability to support tall mountain ranges, the terrain becomes lower and wider. The sharp peaks, the deep valleys, the dramatic ridgelines we associate with Earth. Gone. Slowly crushed flat by a gravity that no longer allows them. First day, the ocean is changing in ways no one expected. The extra gravity pulls water harder toward the lowest points on the surface. Sea levels shift unevenly across different regions. Coastal cities face an unexpected surge, not from a tsunami, but from a slow gravitational redistribution of water. The atmosphere continues to compress. Lower, denser cloud formations develop under the higher gravity. Weather patterns that took millions of years to stabilize begin to destabilize. Storms become more intense, more frequent, less predictable. The tectonic acceleration continues. By the end of the first day, multiple major volcanic eruptions have begun. Sulfur dioxide and carbon dioxide pour into the atmosphere. The sky in volcanic zones turns yellow, then orange, then a deep, suffocating red. The air burns in your throat. And that sulfur smell, sharp, chemical, like struck matches multiplied by 1,000, becomes the new scent of the world. And yet, some people adapt. Not because humans are extraordinary, but because humans are deeply, stubbornly determined to survive. Underground shelters become the most valuable structures on the planet. Deep caves, naturally pressurized and thermally stable, become the new survival zones. Over the first weeks, agricultural systems collapse. Most crops cannot survive 2G for extended periods. Root systems that grew upward toward the sky now grow flat and wide against the ground. Only low-growing plants with dense, strong root structures hold any real survival advantage. By the first month, the atmosphere is measurably thicker. Breathing at lower altitudes still functions. But anyone at higher elevations begins to experience the atmospheric compression very differently. The breathable zone of the planet effectively shrinks downward. Populations that once lived at high altitude face a new kind of existential pressure. Volcanic CO2 output has already triggered an accelerating greenhouse effect. Global temperatures begin to climb on a trajectory that could become irreversible. Within a year, average surface temperatures have risen by several degrees. The feedback loop has begun. More heat means more water evaporation. More water vapor means more greenhouse warming. More warming means more volcanic activity as the crust destabilizes further. And more volcanic activity means more CO2. The human psychological response follows a pattern we've seen before. First, confusion. Second, panic. Third, a desperate, frantic search for safety. And fourth, adaptation by those who find a way. Underground communities form. The deepest, most sheltered valleys become the most inhabited places on this new Earth. Now we have to ask the real question. Who, or what, could actually survive? Simple organisms, bacteria, archaea, extremophiles, would likely be just fine. They have survived conditions far more extreme than double gravity. Single-celled life is remarkably, almost stubbornly, resilient. Small, low-mass animals might adapt over time. Insects, which are already excellent survivors in extreme conditions, would likely do reasonably well. Their exoskeletons help support them against higher gravity. Small reptiles and amphibians, low to the ground, might carry some evolutionary advantage. The age of small, low creatures might begin. But large mammals? Large mammals are biological systems optimized for one specific gravity, 1G. Hearts that evolved for one gravity cannot quickly adapt to 2. Bone density, muscle fiber composition, blood pressure regulation. All of it was fine-tuned over millions of years for the exact gravity we have today. And here is where the science becomes genuinely fascinating. Astronomers have confirmed hundreds of exoplanets that are between 1.5 and 2 times the size of Earth. We call them super-Earths. They are among the most common types of planets in our galaxy. Some of them orbit in what we call the habitable zone, the right distance from their star for liquid water. For years, scientists have debated whether super-Earths could support life. Our scenario today suggests the answer is deeply complicated. A planet with twice the gravity would almost certainly have a much thicker atmosphere. Greater internal heat means greater volcanic activity. Greater volcanic activity means higher atmospheric CO2 and sulfur compounds. The terrain would be flatter than anything we know, with no tall mountains to create diverse ecological zones. A world in geological overdrive. A world where complex cardiovascular biology faces enormous obstacles. Super-Earths may be among the most common planets in the galaxy, but complex life on them may be far from guaranteed. And here is the final twist. We started this video wondering about super-Earths. We asked, could anything live on a planet twice the size of Earth? The answer, based on everything we've just explored, is probably not like us. Not the complex, multicellular, large-bodied kind of life that walks and breathes and builds cities. And that tells us something important about the universe. We have been searching for habitable worlds. We have been hoping that bigger, more massive planets might harbor rich, complex life. But gravity doesn't care about our hopes. Size matters, not just for technology and civilization, but for the most fundamental biological question of all. Can a heart beat against this gravity? Can blood reach a brain? Can roots hold a plant to the ground without snapping? The difference between a world where life flourishes and a world where it cannot may come down to a few thousand miles of radius, a few extra multiples of mass. Earth's gravity isn't accidental. It is the result of 4.5 billion years of formation, cooling, and chemical sorting. It ended up being just heavy enough to hold an atmosphere, and just light enough for cells to divide and animals to stand upright. If Earth had been born twice as large, the story of complex life might have stopped at single cells. No fish, no forests, no cities, just microbes, clinging to the bottom of a thick, hot, crushing world, waiting for conditions that never came. But here you are, on exactly the right planet, with exactly the right gravity, at exactly the right moment in the history of this world. That is not ordinary. Earth doesn't need to be bigger to be perfect. It just needs to be exactly this size. The next time you lift a cup of coffee, or take a step outside, or just stand still and feel your feet on the ground, remember, it could have been twice as hard. If this question made you think differently about the planet you live on, hit that like button and subscribe to The Science If. Every week, we ask the impossible questions about the universe we live in. And next time, what if Earth was half its current size?